everybody, how's it going? Um, I want to start off this video by saying a couple things. This is going to be a pretty just like, not really a first impression, not really like a live reaction to this video. I watched this video a couple days ago, or not a couple days ago, I guess only one day ago, and I didn't really have time to make like a full-fledged response to it. There's a lot to talk about in it. I think it's a very interesting video where a guy, I think, puts down his thoughts about the current state of the game of RuneScape. Albeit from a very high level perspective. I think that's without a doubt. And I just want to give my take on it. I think that it's important to I want to acknowledge where I'm coming from, because I think that while it's easy to maybe dismiss maybe my opinion about the game because like I'm not a super high level player, but just to give some background as to where I am, I'm starting to get into more of this high level stuff. I've been playing the game for a very long time. I've explored much of the content the game has to offer. But as far as gaming goes, I am the type of person that does like playing very difficult games. I like having to like master very complex stuff and like push myself to the limits. Just to give you guys a couple of examples of like things I'd like doing in games, like I like playing like Elden Ring on Soul Level 1. I love the Souls games. I always do like challenge runs of them to push myself. So I feel like I can understand some of the mentality behind where someone like Gnomonkey is coming from, despite not necessarily being maybe at the same level. Um, that being said, just to kind of give you guys a little bit of background, I want to acknowledge like how I play the game, and maybe and I want to bring that up because I do think that that's important to consider when giving my opinions about stuff, about the criticisms that I might have towards his video or his take, because I think that it's very important to know that if somebody's giving criticism, like how do they play the game, and then maybe that could be like potentially biasing the way that how they answer what type of particular criticisms they might give towards what this video might have or say. And then additionally, on top of all of that, one more thing I want to say. It's very unfortunate that a guy, despite how much you might not agree with him, I'm talking about Gnomonkey here, you might not agree with everything he says. I think that's fine, but it's really fucking shitty that, I mean, like, it's to be expected that when you put your opinion out there in the public, people are going to critique it. It's shitty though that some people don't critique it, they just roast you over and over and over again for maybe a minor technical error you made or something like that. And even if that's not the case, maybe just like you just don't agree with their point, but you just present it in a really like childish and immature way that really like is just super fucking hurtful. I think like no one should have their opinions, if they're genuine opinion, where their intention is seriously to make the game better, be like that lambasted and like insulted. It's just a shitty, horrible thing to fucking do. And like, I mean, I just feel the people that would do that, if they did the same, they'd never ever put their opinions out in the game, like genuinely, like serious, like their actual heartfelt opinions, because if they actually did and somebody yelled at them and mocked them, they'd probably be really hurt by it. They usually put in some very lowbrow, not really serious, heartfelt plea to anything, because, being open and honest and vulnerable like that opens you up to attacks. But so I do want to commend Gnomonkey's like genuine, like putting his actual heartfelt opinions out there. I might not agree with him. When I watched the video, I definitely did not agree with a lot of what he said. But I'm hoping that maybe from my perspective, even though yes, I'm not the same position as him, I think it would be a bit it would be unwise to just dismiss people's opinion just because they aren't the same exact position as you, because maybe they can offer perspectives that you wouldn't have seen. And I hope that maybe that could be enlightening, not just to him, but to everybody else. So that's the goal. Just to give you a little background of where I play the game. I play the game as in a semi-restricted account. I'm a bronze man, which basically means that I can trade with other players, but only after I've gotten the like equipment through like Iron Man means. So it means I have to have gotten the item as a drop first, or like gotten the skill level and made it beforehand, or something like that, or bought it from a shop before I can trade it with other players. It's kind of like you still have to like go for like most of your gear in the game and like do all the same grinds and stuff like that like an Iron Man typically would. The difference is that like you don't have to do all the tedium like making potions and stuff like that. You can just buy them off the G once you've made them before. All right, let's get started. Before I don't want to keep delaying.
As the nostalgia that surrounds old-school RuneScape wanes, the community now faces new challenges. A big chunk of the player base feels disregarded and neglected, not just for weeks or months, but for an extended period of years.
Okay. very important to consider what he means by big chunk of the player base. This is not like a this is I have watched this video before and I've kind of like reflected on it, but I just really wanted to get my thoughts out there before I continued. I don't think it's as big as a chunk of the player base as he thinks. I'm willing to bet that the amount of players that were even eligible to do Desert Treasure 2 was probably at most 10 to 5% of the player base. Just knowing what the average, and I'm not counting bots, obviously, so everything I'm going to say is not including bots. I just don't think most players are at the point in the game to be doing anything. Like, I think Vorkath is already like prohibitive to some players. I mean that seriously. Like, I think like they could probably try it, but they just don't do it. I mean, if you're curious, just go to like pretty much any area of the game, look up people's scores. I do this every once in a while because I get bored. I mean, like, let's just do this now. I know I'm in Motherlode Mine, which is generally a skilling based area, but like if I just look up this character, like what has he done in the game? 5 Chaos Fanatic kills, 9 Barrows runs. This guy's level 3 is probably a bot. Oh, that's the wrong one. I don't want to trade with the guy. No, I'm so bad at this. Yeah, he's got like, well, this is probably a bot. Look up. 37 Barrows runs. 9 Bryophyta. 22 Hespori. 58 Temporos, which is a skilling boss. 560 shot. Linabelle. Look up. I mean, like, I would even say this is the case even if I go to high skill level worlds. If I go to like the 2000 world, granted this is Australia, so not at very high times. This guy might have some. Like, I'm not denying that they probably have some. Like, look, he's got Chaos Fanatic kills, got Dagonoth kills, a couple Barrows kills, a couple of Gauntlet kills, some Vorkath, Zelcano, Zulra, none of the new bosses, no Chambers of Zarek, no TOA. Well, 6 normal mode TOAs. And then no, what's it called? TOBs. I can never find TOB. So like no serious amount of rating. This guy might have a couple more because he's a higher level. And like the point is, even if they have a couple more, it's not even. Oh look, this guy has literally no raids done. None, and he's like almost maxed in combat. And I know this is just like I'm just being quick about this, and I'm in one area of the game, and this is not a very like full fleshed out survey. But like truthfully speaking, and I know in Gnomonkey's opinion, high level to him, as you'll find out from the examples he gives, he doesn't even just mean people that are doing raids. He means people that are also like speed running, trying to go the most efficient optimal route, trying to do these like more complex tactics like CMs and stuff like that. Which, look, that's fine. They are absolutely a legitimate part of the player base, but they are not at all a majority, not even close. We go to the G and start randomly pulling players, assuming we're taking out bots. There's tons of them that just haven't done, even attempted a raid. At bare minimum, some of them have barely even attempted Vorkath. Like, and that's not to like shit on any players. I'm just trying to get a genuine, like, this is the player base. Like, this is the player base. And so I think he's talking about a really small amount of players at the end of the day. Which, it doesn't mean that they're not important. Doesn't mean that they don't have any opinion. It doesn't mean that they aren't even... It means they are still a part of the game that shapes the game. 100%. I don't disagree with that. They're the people that, when people are watching RuneScape videos, they're watching high-level-ish, like streamers and stuff, which aren't necessarily high-level. But they're watching all of this content. They take enjoyment in it, for sure. But let's not be confused about actually how big this player base is.
This is a heartfelt appeal to GIX, urging them to set aside corporate greed and genuinely listen to the concerns of both myself and our community.
Okay. Maybe I'll get flamed for this take. I don't think that every time a company, the only decisions a company makes is purely out of corporate greed. And that sounds very like I'm shilling for companies. I'm not at all, or simping for companies. I just, look, you work in a big company, you know that a lot of the people that work, I'm not trying to say there aren't some assholes in there that just don't give a fuck. There are some. And I think to some degree, like the way we have a structure set up in like the world, the way companies work, is it does sometimes encourage that highly ruthless mindset. At the end of the day, there are just sometimes good people. the devs, I don't think on a day-to-day basis are always thinking about how do I perfectly manipulate the drop rates of this boss so that it's going to result in more membership opportunities. I just think sometimes they're just trying to make fun content. I don't know if it's. I think what they're trying to do more than anything. I think it's like I don't think it's not part of the equation for sure. I don't think a dev is thinking about that at all. I think it's like their managers are thinking about that type of stuff. The devs are just responsible for making content. But I think that for sure, the devs are probably like more like I would say like the vast majority of their thoughts, especially the company, I think, is making fun content to most of its players. Under the basis that making fun content is going to bring them more money. That's why they haven't really brought microtransactions into RuneScape or old school RuneScape for quite a while. Or at all, really. Like, so I don't know if I really think this is a corporate greed thing. They're appealing to acquiring more players on. I mean, I guess you could kind of make that opinion that's a corporate greed thing. But that's also under the assumption that you think that the content is like bad and not good, but like it is also good and is fitting the needs of the current player base. Like it could be the case that you're making like I think maybe the argument he's making is like, oh, they're only making content that's appealing to acquiring new players. But like it's also fun to the current players. So I don't see what the issue is. It's like they're also appealing to the needs of the current players. So you can't necessarily argue that it's purely for corporate greed. Anyways, it's only been 20 seconds and I keep cutting him off. I got to keep going.
In this video, I will discuss the absence of updates for high-level players, the disappointment surrounding the Forestry system, the anticipation for Desert Treasure 2, the removal of the Ancient Prayer Book, the disparity in update history compared to RS3, the need for quality of life improvements, the subpar quality assurance practices, the abandoned Tombs of Amasket, and testimonials from players across all skill levels who are dissatisfied with the current state of the game.
So, this is just set as evidence that he's going to use to justify that. So, it's kind of a bit confused, I feel like, personally. That was one thing I didn't like about this video 100%. I felt like, at first I watched it, I was like, oh, it's really good, but like one thing I really think is a little bit, which I know this is why it's heartfelt, because he's pouring out all his frustration into this one video, which is totally fair. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I think it absolutely is valid and is a very, very useful thing to hear for sure. But I do think it does make it a bit confused, because the video's like general thesis was like the intro thesis I think was more regarding like complaints about the state of the game for high level players, but then he's referring to like lack of quality, like a bunch of other things that I don't think are 100% related. It's like not all exclusively related to high level content. As you watch the video, it's very clear like some of the arguments he's making are just like this does not feel like it's at all relevant for high level content, or like not super relevant in my. But we'll keep going.
I'm not approaching this with only complaints. I'm also coming forward with viable solutions and ideas that have the potential to address these issues. While we possess a polling system as a community, we still feel unheard and devoid of avenues to express our discontent with the game's status.
He means accurately the high-level player base's ability to communicate their concerns, which would mean that in some way he thinks that their opinions are more valid or should be taken more seriously, even though the polls majority of the opinions are something else or something. Well, that's not necessarily true. I'm sorry. Let me disagree with that. I think I think this is I don't think this is really a super important point because we don't get to decide what comes to polls really that much as players. We just kind of vote on what comes into the game. I think this is a fair point. He feels like even though we have a polling system, it doesn't necessarily accurately reflect the views of what the high-level players are, and that could be because, as a high-level player, you don't get to choose what goes in. As a player, you don't get to choose what goes in the polls. It could just be whatever. And so, even though it's like, oh, it's like the illusion that we're actually that the company's really listening to you because we're going with what the fans want, but like, it's kind of like if you can choose what issues to vote on, and I'm like, and I only choose to like list out PVM updates. And it's like, well, the PvP update community is clearly being ignored because like only updates related to PVM are being pulled. Like that's a shitty thing to feel and to do. So yeah.
Our main forms of contact are hilariously still Reddit and Twitter. Most of my friends at a similar skill level have given up trying to reach out and do something and have simply moved on to other games or quit trying. I personally have been told a multitude of times that my thoughts don't matter, as I represent a small portion of the community.
Which is a shitty thing to hear. I think that can be rephrased in a better way to say that you have to recognize like your thoughts are like they are thoughts that do count, but ultimately at the end of the day, they are only representing a small amount of people, so the amount of weighting that they should play in the decision making is pretty low. I think that's objective, that we can make that objective claim. I think that that's a fair. You can make some arguments that like, well, the high level community is what drives in new players, blah 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 blah. I don't think 100% I don't think it's 100% true at all. But I do think that they bear some consideration, absolutely. But I do think that it's like, yeah, they don't play as much consideration to the game as I think the average player does, personally.
And I'm tired of it. The opinions of the high-level
Which is
community
fair.
hold significance, even among those who do not stream their accomplishment, those who are not part of clans, and even those who have quit the game entirely. We all want what is best for the game and yearn to revive it to its former glory.
True, and so we should
be
absolutely hear them out.
And make the game enjoyable for everybody instead of treating it like an idle medieval clicker game that you pull up on your lunch break for a few minutes a day.
Depends what people want, unfortunately. I do think some people are totally content with it being an idle medieval clicker game. Unfortunately. And I will tell you, like, I'm not that type of player, 100%. The content I find the most enjoyable is PVMing. I'm not, like, amazing at it for sure, but I do see, like, the vast amount of depth and appeal. And, like, I haven't done all the raids, like, to a high level yet, but I really love doing them. I like doing, you know, all the boss encounters in this game. It's the most fun part of the game for sure. I mean, to be fair, like, my favorite thing to do in this game is collection logging, which I like seeing the full spectrum of stuff in the game has to offer. But I do 100% agree that idle medieval clicker game is not the goal. It's definitely like not the it's not exactly what the game. It's like the game. It's like one of the nice things about the game that it has that content for sure, and that it can be played that way. That's like a beauty of it. But like ultimately, it's not the most fun content. But I do think that there's a mistake in arguing that that's like the only way the game can be, or that's like a mistake if the game somehow puts any amount of effort into that, which I don't think he's saying. He just doesn't want it to turn into that, which I think is fair.
Let's talk about what high-level content even is and what we consider to be challenging and intricately designed. When someone mentions high-level content, HLC, or demanding gameplay, they're referring to pieces of content with mechanical depth, such as the Inferno, Chambers of Zarek, and the Theater of Blood. These updates have held considerable significance in the speedrunning community and offer highly coveted rewards such as kits and the Infernal Cape, or just outright good GP. I've seen misconceptions crop up among both Jagex and the low to mid-level player base when they mistakenly label encounters like the Tombs of Amasket, Desert Treasure 2 bosses, Corrupted Gauntlet, Muzpa, Nightmare, even her harder variant Fasani, Nex, and Fight Caves as high-level, difficult, or even impossible.
That's somewhat true. I don't know how many players genuinely do this, but I will say for sure, I gotta be careful to not, like, bias my thinking. I think these pieces of content are technically high level for a lot of people. I do think so. In his mind, he'd say, no, that's not high level. There is other content that goes beyond it. I will say, for sure, if I had to rank difficulty in the game, 100% Inferno, TOB, Cox, for sure, are in, like, A tier difficulty, and then the CM versions are, like, S tier. And then these are, like, B tier, and then Jad is, like, C tier. Like, in terms of actual difficulty, and that's kind of a tough thing to kind of swallow. I'm just trying to argue that from the perspective of, like, genuinely, when you get your fire cape, there is still a mountain to climb. Like, this is Jad. If you think Jad's hard, there's nothing wrong with thinking Jad can be hard for you. Like, 100% you can interpret Jad as being difficult. I'm not saying that's wrong, but it's relative to where you're at. And the truth is in relative to the entire course of what our, like, OSRS offers in terms of difficulty, Jad is not, like, super super hard. There is so much more content that is way harder than Jad, and that's why it's, like, relative to the entire game, absolutely he's not wrong here. That it's true that he's not 100% wrong. So I do agree with his take here 100%, that I think people mistakenly assume this. Now the people, they sit from their perspective and go, well, that's high level to me, and it's like, I think that's fair, but his argument is across the entire spectrum of the game. Now that's all well and good. His claims about reality might be fine. That's irrelevant, though, to the real problem, which is, like, is this content good enough for players? for like what players want. Is this content like hard for what players want? And the answer is absolutely. Most players are never gonna get past, like, some players are gonna get past Gauntlet. I think any player is capable of getting past the Gauntlet for sure if they practice it. But it's hard for a lot of players, and that's fine. So like, to them that's okay, but that's all that really matters. I mean, like, to them, they care. They want people. The average person in the game wants a level of difficulty that is like achievable to them, and I think that that's healthier for a game. I don't disagree with the idea of we need more complex stuff, but like, he is right about this labeling. I don't think he's read all wrong here. I just don't think it's necessarily that relevant per se to label that there's this content and this content and this content. I think his argument. We'll keep watching.
In reality, these encounters require minimal practice and involve straightforward mechanics, failing to provide us with substantial content to engage with, learn from, and truly challenge ourselves. We're looking for content to bite into and tear apart, to solve and find techniques for, and we simply haven't been getting that. By presenting these as examples of what is and isn't, it should be obvious why I'm disheartened by what Jagex and the community perceives as a lack of updates tailored to our needs. The most recent, truly challenging content release was the Theater of Blood, a staggering 5 years ago.
I'm trying to think if, like, objectively that's true. If there's anything else that's been like really hard since then. Like, I'm trying to think what I mean, it's hard. I haven't done TOB, so it's hard for me to assess whether it's like really difficult. But I think about like something like Chambers, and think about like I'm saying this as someone who doesn't even have that much Chambers experience, but I have a lot of interest in like learning like high level stuff. So I'm curious in like learning about all these different tactics and stuff. Like, I definitely can watch a video and see and know what they're doing in it, like why they're moving the way they are, what tiles they're moving to, and why they're doing so. That's pretty intricate and that's pretty complex, the timing of stuff. So I have some knowledge of it. And is that the case that there's no other content in the game that's been really that difficult?
For half a decade, our entire
Maybe that's true, I would say.
community has been deprived of updates. A community that serves as a beacon of inspiration for others to grow and excel within the game, fostering personal growth and a profound sense of accomplishment. We make the guides, entertain through streaming, and find all of the cool things that everyone else in the community uses.
Okay. I remember watching this and thinking it was not a very good argument, in my opinion. I think that I felt like he was arguing that because high-level players do all these things to the game, they need to be taken seriously and like need to make content for them. And I just sat there and said, I don't think there's any obligation to players that discover things. Like, it's important to understand that like they're not discovering like the Muspa safe spot or like tick eating for the sake of like some of those techniques just aren't accessible to average players. Some of them are, for sure. Like, Wook's walking is definitely accessible to anybody if they wish to learn it. It's hard, but it's accessible for sure. 7-0 Zami or those like types of methods are really hard, but absolutely like doable with enough practice for sure. But are they making that for average players? No, they're doing that for themselves, and that's not like a bad thing. It's not like they're greedy. It's like they're trying to accomplish really difficult feats, and then as a consequence, something nice comes out of it that benefits a lot of other players. But does that mean there's any like obligation for them to have to be like rewarded with like new content? I don't necessarily think so. Maybe I'm misinterpreting this part here, but this was my take on this when I heard it. I was like, I don't think that's a valid criticism. I don't think that's a valid opinion, like argument for, or at least a very strong argument for why content should be created. If he's arguing, yeah, I just didn't think it was a very, I don't know. Especially because there's a lot of streamers that don't do this stuff, and they do fine, and people enjoy watching their content for sure. I didn't find this to be a very strong argument, in my opinion.
Even from a corporate standpoint, this community acts as a testament to the game's health and serves as invaluable advertisement and growth. I went through the entire list of updates.
I do think that high-level players are good advertising it for sure.
And I gathered every single major update since 2016.
Now, some people, I remember looking at this graphic, and they were roasting this. I can somewhat understand that. I think that his consideration of mid-level and low-level and high-level, some people completely disagree. They're like, Nightmare is not mid-level. Like, you're putting Nightmare in the same difficulty as Firewatch Sentinels. it's kind of not clear what exactly he means by mid-level. Maybe he means like you need to have the gear to do it, as well as the actual skill level to do it. Because like I'll be very blunt with you, Next is a fucking joke in masses. It's not hard at all. From a duo perspective or like trio, it's got a bit of difficulty to it for sure. Tombs of a Masket, this is the most controversial one. I do agree Tombs of Masket is pretty. It's not that hard. It's very gear limited. I feel like, especially like in terms of like, yeah, it's very gear limited. Like once you know how to do Insanity, it's not hard. It's really not that hard to do Tombs of a Masket, like a high level. And then you need like the Karis Pars in the Sun to get the extra 30 raid level and shit. Like a lot of things that would make Tombs of Masket, there's just nothing that really makes it super hard. Like I feel like, in my opinion, it's just very like tedious. But he'll go into that more in detail. I know that. As far as, but like the problem that he has, the problem that I think that was the most valid argument I heard about this chart here and his analysis of it, is that he's a little bit too hyper fixated on the high level stuff and kind of discounts like all the other diversity of contents. Like the point he's making is that the high level community has been ignored and they need more content. But I feel like that can be true, and we can argue that that maybe is true or whatever, but it's discounting the reality of like, okay, so do you want, as a corrective, do you want Jagex to then start focusing more on it? But like the problem is, they've produced a bunch of very good updates that have genuinely impacted the game for the better. And so you're arguing that you would like them to just discount all these in favor of producing more high level? Like, I don't think so. Like, do I, for the sake of getting more bosses, want to give up a Kingdom Divided? I know some people don't like quests. That's okay. I do like quests. I think they're actually kind of fun. A lot of people, like, I mean, there's so many updates here, like Guardians of the Rift, Giant's Foundry. If I had to give those up for high level content, would I want that? I'm like, I think if that's the only content you enjoy, sure. But like for the vast amount of players in the game, these pieces of content these updates help a lot of people at a lot of points in the game, and change the game like as a whole. And I really like them. I think overall they make the game more diverse and well-rounded and fit a better, bigger player base. So like I could probably even grant him everything, but it doesn't change what I think should be done. I absolutely think this is like, maybe they should change a couple. If they can change a couple simple things to make it better, absolutely. But like, I don't know if they should be really changing much of what they do, to be honest with you. And in fact, we'll get to that point at the end of the video when we get to the Awakened bosses. I think the Awakened bosses are the solution. I think that's the solution to the high level community's complaints. At least the complaints that he makes. I think that the Awakened stuff is absolutely the best thing to do. At least it goes in the right direction. We'll get there in a bit. But like I said, I'm taking way too long. We need to get through this.
Effectively, what I've found is we had 2 great years in 2017 and 2018, where the mods found their footing and put out some amazing updates.
I want to make this. Maybe I don't remember. I know I'm going on another tangent again. Maybe I don't remember this is true. So I've been playing a lot of Cox recently. I'm learning about skipping specials and stuff like that. That shit feels like a bug. That shit feels so unintentional to me. That's like how like people have found ways to absolutely, distort the mechanics in such a way to like be that beneficial. To do that type of stuff. That does not feel intentional. Like the devs did not design the boss with that in mind. For people to be able to skip entire mechanics from ult. Well, I think it's impressive and it's very cool that players have discovered this, for sure, it's not at all what was intended. And so, to say that the mods, I do think there's a lot of depth to Chambers. A lot of that depth that comes from, like, some of the stuff is just, like, skipping the mechanics. In some cases, or finding ways to, like, not engage with them at all, which is just really, like, I don't know. It's an interesting way to argue that, like, they did a good job with it. It's like they did a good job at making such a busted, buggy thing that people could distort it. I don't know. That's just my take on it.
After that, it dropped off a bit. My chart doesn't include any QOL, so things like shift click drop aren't on there. 2016 was somewhat weak. The biggest additions were the catacomb.
And some of those QOLs, by the way, are like massive. Shift click drop is huge.
And Skatizo. No high level content was added this year, but the team was kind of still finding their footing, so that's kind of understandable. 2017 was the best year OSRS has ever had. I consider this the golden year. We had Chambers of Xeric, Inferno, Fossil Island and everything that added, Grotesque Guardians, Chaos Altar, and Revenants. Chambers
But birdhouses on here. They literally have like some people like literally exclusively play the game using birdhouses.
This was pretty janky when it came out, but Ulm is an incredible boss fight regardless of whether or not they intended him to be fought the way he is.
Yeah, exactly. But but then how could you argue that that's like, well, find their footing and stuff like that? I don't know. Maybe that's just like it's a very minor criticism to be like, well, it was very like because saying like they found their footing somehow argues that it was like somewhat intentional. I think in my mind, but whatever.
Cox added new prayers and a ridiculous amount
It's not
of
that big of a
items,
deal.
arguably too many. It has flaws, but it's easily one of the best pieces of PVM content in the game currently. Pretty good for the first attempt at a raid. Inferno is the best PVM in the game, and it's hard to argue otherwise. It's an incredibly difficult challenge meant for only the best players.
Let's go on 1.5 speed just to get through this faster.
Inferno speedruns are the most difficult content in the game with the most room for mastery. Fossil Island, Grotesque, and Chaos Altar were all solid additions to the game in their own right as well. 2018 was an amazing year for content as well. We had Tob released, Challenge Mode Chambers, Dragon Slayer 2, and Warcath. Tob is the best raid in the game. It has an extremely high skill ceiling, and every room has unique mechanical depth. Nilocus is the best raid boss in the game, tons of depth with semi-random spawns. A speedrunner in the Nilocus room will be running all over the room, doing seemingly thoughtless actions, but it's all carefully calculated to keep the room as empty as possible at all times. Maiden, Bloat, Soditseg, Zarpus, and Verzik all have an incredible level of depth.
I'm not going to disagree with any of this. I think this is all accurate.
CMs are great content even if they also have flaws. It's Chambers, but it's cranked to 11. Doing every single boss in Chambers in a row with immense stats requires mastery to survive.
Also, I just don't have the ability to comment on it.
There are speed scenes for both trio and 5 scenes as well. TMs require careful inventory management, banking, and planning your exact route through the raid very carefully. Warcath isn't the hardest boss, but it is a solid mid-game addition and teaches a lot of endgame mechanics. 2019 had no major high-level content, but it was still a really solid year. Kevos Lowlands, including Konar, Hydra, and the Farming Guild were all added. Song of the Elves also came out this year with Gauntlet and Elf Agility. Gauntlet has a lot of mechanical depth and is easily the hardest content to come out this year. It isn't incredibly difficult to get completions, but fast completions and speedruns require a lot of game knowledge.
I don't think it really matters. I mean, like, speedruns are whatever. I just don't think that's, like, that big of a deal, personally. I mean, like, it's nice, it's cool when they happen, for sure. I really like that type of stuff. I don't think I anything to say about it.
At a high level, you basically need to chance death to get any faster, which isn't particularly fun.
Need to what?
A lot of game knowledge. It's not my favorite piece of content, as at a high level, you basically need to chance death to get
chance death,
faster,
okay.
Which isn't particularly fun. 2020 is when things started going downhill. Since the Father was added, which meant we got Hallowed Sepulchre, which is actually the best healing update of all time, so at least there was that. Nightmare was added, which is a lukewarm piece of content at best. It requires the ability to catch prayers before they land and some very basic movement, but really the only difficulty here was that it's a very long fight. The only other really notable update here was Trailblazer. 2021 had some attempts at hard content that really fell flat. Hard mode Tob was added, a complete step down from regular Tob in every way. Bloat is simply more random and loses a lot of depth from that. The cap in the Nilocus room is now so high it requires zero thought of how to get more of them to spawn, meaning you simply kill every big Nilo you see. Zarpus is easier in every way than regular. He actually has lower defense and you simply AFK after he screeches. The only room that was an improvement, in my opinion, was Verzik, due to her getting more health after tornadoes. The Jag challenges were a fun distraction for a day or two, but are very simple and have no rewards besides combat achievements. Speaking of which, those were added this year too. 90% of the combat achievements are a complete slog, either being simple KC tasks or very simple...
This is not a good argument. The plurality of combat achievements, like, I think this is gonna, I think, be the, this is like a microcosm of the major critique, I think, that is, I think, actually, this is actually, I think, what they're doing here with combat achievements is the solution, which is that a portion of them are dedicated to high-level content. But it's trying to cater to people of all skill levels. That's why there's easy, medium, hard, elite, master, and grandmaster. Now, if he's arguing that the grandmaster challenges are, I do think that some of them are not great, 100%, right? And some of them are just annoying, and they could do a better job, you know, thinking of better tasks. I don't disagree with that take at all, because I do think some of them are ass. Like, this one is just stupid. Killing Kriar by only dealing damage to him with a Salamander is just a stupid... It's not hard, it's just annoying, you know? Do you have rigor? Do you have really good range gear? That's it. That's the only... Maybe, I don't even know if you use style on him. I don't see, like, this isn't very difficult. Some of the challenges, the gear restrictions do actually impose something that's, like, quite interesting, you know? Like, the one where you have to go do TOB using Barrow's equipment, that actually seems pretty cool, you know? Some of them are just like this, which are just not very interesting, in my opinion. Or like the KC ones. That's fair. But like, if he's arguing 90% of them suck, it's like, dude, that's because there's like all the other tiers of difficulty that need to be met. Like, yeah. Like I said, I deeply am thankful for somebody putting out their opinion out there. I think it's absolutely should be respected, for sure, and I am taken seriously, but I just think that I just don't agree with much of what he's saying. Not in a hateful way, I just straight up I don't think it's representative of what I would consider to be my perspective of the game or what I think is a more objective. I think sometimes he gets certain things right, like he can come up with a more objective perspective of the game. Like his analysis of the difficulty levels of content, I don't think is incorrect at all. Like I said, people say, oh, I think like relative to each other, it's 100% the case that Chambers Eric TOB is way harder than Jad by far. And like when you compare everything in the game, Jad is just not that difficult. In terms of like the entire spectrum of the game. But relative to where the player base is, he is hard for a lot of them. So.
Basic things you do once. I can count the number of good achievements on one hand, and that's pretty sad considering there are 485.
Yeah, but the vast majority, this wouldn't count. It's more like how many out of 90 are really worthwhile to count. And then even then, I still think he's not wrong, but it's much higher than he's thinking. Percentage.
Fasani was also added, which people like for some reason. This took the only aspect Nightmare had going for it, the ability to do it with friends, and gutted that, making it only solo. Her mechanics aren't any more difficult besides for punishing you with incredibly high damage when you make a mistake. I'd argue Fasani is easier than regular Nightmare, at least solo, because the fight is much shorter and there's no chip damage through prayer. The other major additions this year were Soul Wars, which is dead content, Group Iron Man, and A Kingdom Divided.
Oh, you can do a Dolo. That's a joke. It's 100% dead content. It does this fucking minigame.
2022's major PVM was Nex and TOA. I've come around to Nex after fighting her quite a bit lately. No boss, except maybe Infernal speedruns, require the ability to switch like Nex does. Step unders and resetting are underrated mechanics. I still feel she doesn't have very much depth, but it's a lot better than...
Can I be very blunt? I think switching is not very fun. Like, I don't personally enjoy 8-way switches, especially because I just don't really enjoy RSI, which is repetitive strain injury. Like to my fucking wrist. I don't like getting tendonitis in my wrist. I think some of that shit is really cringe. I think the decision making is fun. I think swapping is sometimes enjoyable. But I think pathing, prayer flicking, attacking monsters, but like the crazy 8-way swap shit is just not enjoyable to me. It's really annoying. I know that's probably going to be a very big critique. Like, I see this as somebody who's getting into like this. Like I said, like I'm not like a high level player, right? For sure, but I just find it annoying as fuck. Like anything that's going to require like a lot of swapping is just not enjoyable. Like honestly, I was going to give an example. There's like certain bosses where I just straight up take less pieces of gear, not because like I could bring in more gear swaps for Cox. I just refuse to because I fucking hate swapping that much. I just don't like swapping 20 pieces of gear. I end the raids with tons of supplies left. You know, like I have pretty okay foundational mechanics. For somebody like my level of the game, I do think I'm pretty decent for like where I'm at in the game. And I could go do more stuff to push myself to go faster, and sometimes I do feel a desire to do that. Vast majority of the time, I don't feel that fucking desire because I just feel like that type of stuff is just not that enjoyable to me. Swapping 8 pieces of gear for the sake of getting an extra like 1% DPS just isn't very fun to me. It doesn't make me feel very good too. So that's just my personal take.
And there are other attempts over the years before this.
I don't know how other players people feel that way.
Section, but it missed the mark and was not...
Especially because like swapping just doesn't feel like a complex mechanic in a lot of situations. Like, I'm sure there's absolutely times where when you get pushed to the extreme, it can be like if you're in a situation, or like maybe this is the case for Nilo rooms. I'm not in Nilo rooms where I haven't really done much of Nilos at I've only done entry mode for TOP. But maybe it's the case where it's like enemies are coming in and then like you have to decide like I could just attack them with like a half swap of my gear versus a full swap, because if I full swap, sure, I can do slightly more damage or maybe like do something extra, but like it's going to take more ticks to swap than it is to just like freeze. If that's the case, there's some interesting aspects to work on, but other times it's just swap your pieces of gear and attack. It's just kind of not that fun to me. I don't find that very enjoyable.
Not a good high-level raid like it should have been. Major updates beyond this included things like quest speedrunning and the PvP arena, both of which are...
Which, I'm going to be honest with you, I think Jag has fucked up speedrunning. It's unfortunate because it does seem like one of those things that would be fun. I actually really like speedrunning. I have the speedrunning Graceful outfit, because it looks sick. It's my favorite. It's the best piece of Graceful in the game. It's really easy to get, by the way. Like, super fucking easy to get the awards for it. I've gotten Diamond time on, I think, literally just Cook's Assistant, which is like the highest one, and that was fucking hard. But the Platinum time on a lot of the other quests is really easy to get. But like, bluntly, I like speedrunning. It's a shame that I don't think the way that they did it was like really good. I think they should just like make it to players can do whatever the fuck they want. Just do whatever the fuck you want. Like, I don't know why they give us the set stuff every single time. Just let people do whatever the fuck they want. And like that way you can make categories of like people do like, okay, like 99 agility speedruns versus 1 agility speedruns or something. I don't know.
Completely dead. There are 11 people in Quest speedrunning worlds as I look at them writing the script. That brings us to now. 2023 so far has added the multi-boss rework, which is a bot-ridden mess. Forestry.
Yeah, but I think it's gotten a lot of people into PvP. Like point to a bunch of these updates which are arguing. I think the argument of this was just that like, let's go back to sorry, I was 847. I just want to get back to like the updates to see what was his major argument for bringing up the updates.
And growth. I went through the entire list of updates on the wiki. Jagex's website is much worse for parsing, and I gathered every single major update since 2016. Effectively, what I found is we had 2 great years in 2017 and 2018, where the mods found their footing and put out some amazing updates. After that, it dropped off a bit. My chart doesn't include any QoS that everyone else in the community uses. Even from a corporate standpoint, this community acts as a testament to the game's health and serves as invaluable advertising.
I'm just looking a little bit more.
I went through the entire list of updates on the wiki. Jagex's website is much worse for parsing, and I build the boss rework.
A lot of these updates are very good. I feel like genuinely, a lot of these updates are quite engaging. Forestry, I have debates about whether I actually like it too much. It's more actually, I don't mind level like the beginning Forestry. I do think the X-ray rates need to be tuned for sure, because I do think that like high effort methods should absolutely be rewarded over Forestry for sure. Methods, but I do like Forestry in general as a concept. I think the tree changes were better for sure. I like getting more collection log stuff. It's fun. It's not bad to do. It got me to train my woodcutting level up from where it used to be, which is really nice. But what else was I gonna say? I think the part 2 stuff. I'm a little bit concerned about the teas for a variety of different reasons, but that's a whole separate thing to talk about. Let's keep going. Like I said, I'm making good time. I don't want to like. There's not much to talk about. Like I just don't agree with his analysis of this chart. It seems like he's trying to argue that like for some reason Jags doesn't make very good updates. But like truthfully, like in terms of what I see here is a bunch of updates that appeal to the vast, not just the vast. I'm not saying vast majority to refer to like 60% of the player base. I'm referring to like all the player base can benefit from this. Granted, yes, the extremely high level player base gets kind of bored of some of these updates. Understandable. I can understand why they wouldn't like things like Muspa. But truthfully, I think that overall it's like they just are appealing to a lot of players and giving content for everybody to do, even if you only do it for a couple times. And he says he uses this as a way to point out that they feel neglected, which, granted, I understand that they feel neglected, but like, I think that they make up an extraordinarily small amount of the player base, and they have to appeal to what's going to be appealing to most players. Even Desert Treasure 2, by the way, is not accessible to most players. So that's already being catered to a minority, in my opinion. But
which is a bot-ridden mess.
I think it's just true.
Forestry and Musba. In 6.5 months, that's what we've gotten in terms of updates. The endgame player base has been completely ignored in cries for QOL. Many of the speedruns we do are hampered by things that could be fixed very easily. TMs require I swap my spellbook with my max cape right after Ice Demon, 6 minutes into the 30-minute raid. That means...
By the way, most of these quality of life things, I don't disagree with at all. I think these are totally like simple, big changes they can make, which would vastly benefit the high-level community for sure. And they're just no-brainers. Like the spellbook swap thing, just put a timer on it. Why does it matter? It's the max level mage cape. Shouldn't it have some sort of fucking reward to it? Just put like a 5 to 10 minute timer on it. Say you can swap your spellbook every 5 to 10 minutes. Like, why does it matter? Why? Like, what is hindered? Why is there a limit here? I just think this is a really silly thing. It's just really silly to me that this is the case. So he brings up a lot of criticisms that are very valuable, and his argument is like these are like basic quality of life changes which could be made for the high level community, and he feels like they shouldn't. Like it's evidence of them being ignored. I just feel like this is lack of due diligence on Jagex's part. Like 100%, they absolutely should just do these. These are 100% just no brainers.
5 CMs per day. Top speedruns use the same thing at Sodetseg, meaning you have a pool of 5 Cobb and CM speedruns you can do each day. This could easily be given a recharge of some kind, either syncing.
I think one thing he could hamper on though more, which would make this a much more convincing argument, is the idea that it's infuriating how simple that such a simple change is so indicative of the very just like the insouciance of Jagex towards the high level community. I'm trying to flex my vocabulary. It just means lack of concern. They just don't take them very seriously.
Items or resources to recharge your swaps, perhaps lowering the total amount to 1 or 2 swaps.
I gotta memorize all these words for the GRE because I'm trying to get to grad school and there's so many fucking annoying words you have to learn that you'll just never use. Anyways, whatever, I'm rambling.
Yes, the prayer points are that tight. Once you use your shield for the day, you might as well stop running. Explorer's Ring charges are used in many setups for additional run energy, but these are limited to 1 run per day as well. These both could be rechargeable in some way to fix this. Inferno speedruns require a Slayer task to run, meaning in order to run Inferno, you need to get a task somehow. The fastest and most efficient method the community has fallen on is Turiel canceling to get a task from Neve, who has the highest weight for Inferno tasks.
This is all true, but I don't think he does a good enough job hampering that. Like, it's not even about making these changes. It's literally like, and this would improve a lot of these issues, improve a lot of things for sure. It's just demonstrating, in his mind, the strongest argument is that it's demonstrating these are such simple to make changes, and their lack of consideration demonstrates the lack of these things not being done. Demonstrates the Jagex's complete like lack of acknowledgement or interest in the high level community, because these are such basic things that should have just been fixed that are apparently being talked about to such a high degree. Personally, I haven't seen many of them. I just, maybe because it's such a small community, I just don't see much of these complaints. Sometimes it is a bit strange, by the way, when you drop into these like high level players, like I would say like the Mulgoat Kirby's, the Adicons, the Gnomonkeys. You just pop into their stream and then hear them talk about things in the game. It's like sometimes you're just hearing a whole different world. Like these people are so in a different perspective of the game, which is not bad. It's just that there's complaints about things I've just never heard before, and it's just like, what? It's like, I think when you start getting to these like high levels, you start to notice these things, and some of them are just really simple changes that Jagex absolutely should just make. They will literally not hurt anyone, or is a quick change that will benefit these high level players pretty massively. And it's very frustrating to be in a high level and not have these changes being taken seriously. At bare minimum, Jagex absolutely should fix these. It would take a dev at most like a week to go through and fix all these changes, I feel like. Maybe that's a bit of ignorance on my part, but
even with an optimized block list and unlocks and efficient Turiel setup, you're looking at about 30 minutes on average to get a Zuck task. Sometimes you get unlucky and can go as dry as 4+ hours without it.
Which is stupid.
If you have a Zuck helmet, you can get 3 attempts per task, but that's still 30 minutes.
The problem is, like, at the end of the day, they're like, oh, is it really worth the dev time? And I think this is such a simple thing that, like, absolutely would, and it would help, like, but keep people more interested in the game, more engaged in the game, for sure. At the bare minimum, the quality of life changes should absolutely be made. They're so simple.
3 attempts, which can be rinsed incredibly quickly. My solution to this would simply give the Jad Challenge Master the ability to assign you Tizhar tasks after completing 6 Jad once. This would be a separate task.
But, like, it's like he has two arguments, right? He's concerned about the lack of content, but also the lack of, like, concern and straight up feeling of straight and blatant disregard. And I think that's kind of what the emotional, where his emotions are coming from. His emotions, I think that's the valid part, is he feels like the high-level community is being ignored. And this is a reiteration of these are simple changes that aren't getting fixed. These are, and then you'll see later he'll bring up TOA and a series of bugs or suggestions that they've had. We've had all these things, and they're simple to fix. Once again, ignored, and it's painting this pattern of Jagex just not caring much about these things. And I think that at times he brings up, okay, there's not like that much content for sure, but truthfully, even just quality of life changes that are simple, no-brainer, are not being made. And that feels really bad. And I think that's where the emotional tone is coming from, which I think is valid. I think that's 100% true. I think some of the quality lectures are so simple, would make the game so much better for this group of players. Doesn't require much effort. It's just not being done. And that feels really bad. I can totally empathize with that position. The content arguments is where it starts to get a little bit shaky, because it's like, well, hold on, I can understand not the content not being introduced, but like there's actually like a legitimate argument to be made there. Like, well, they have to plan some dev time out, and a lot of this content is actually very appealing to a lot of players, and is changing the game overall as a whole, right? A lot of the ways, by the way, if you are a high-level player, maybe this is whatever, a lot of the ways this is fixed is by just playing restricted accounts. I know it sounds really stupid, because like, you're having to intentionally restrict yourself as a means to enjoy the game, but like truthfully, ever since I started playing Bronze Man and also going for collection log stuff, the game's been like 10 times more fun. Every upgrade you get feels so worthwhile. You're doing a lot of content with very suboptimal gear and having to like find interesting strategies to make stuff work. Like, I'm doing stuff that's not on the wiki because there just isn't any advice. Like, I don't have, a ZCB. I have to just be like, I have to find other ways to get like good specs off or whatever, like to have good specs. Like, I'll go to some bosses and they don't say you can use the bofa, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm using the bofa and just praying that it works. You know what? I mean, the bofa is such a good item, it doesn't really matter, so it's usually okay. Sometimes you gotta decide to bring a Serp helm and other pieces of gear because even though the guide doesn't tell you for it, because it's like, I don't have the stuff that they're recommending to me to use, you know? So it's fun, I feel like, to do that, to like kind of trailblaze your own way through the game. I think it's stuff's fun to do. That's the way I like to play the game. It makes the game more enjoyable. It puts a little bit of a challenge on the game in a way that I find enjoyable. But yeah. Anyways, I forgot where I was kind of going with that. But let's keep going.
Stilia, and not reward any.
Oh yeah, that way of playing the game. Sorry, I'm cutting off again. That way of playing the game brings a lot of life and enjoyment to a lot of the content around the scope of the whole game. Like all these other updates, which may not be for you as a high level player, they gain new purpose and life into them by doing that. Like, to me, there's a purpose to going to Mage Train Arena because I have to get the Master Wand if I want to get the Kodai, and I also have to get the Bones to Peaches spell because that's I just have to get that because it's very useful. But then also you have to do it to get Infinity Boots because, well, I have to go there to get the whole collection log stuff, but also getting Infinity Boots gives me, because if I want to get Eternals, I need to get Infinity Boots first from MTA, so I have to go do that content, which is fun. It's not like super fun, but it's something different to do. You explore all the different breadth of content in the game. It just feels like there's such a diverse experience that you see how much stuff there is to do in this game. And like, I have a different appreciation. Like, while I like the high level content, I think it's very engaging and deep. I do also appreciate all the other content in the game, and I can look at all the other stuff and be like, just because it's not high level content where it's like very complex bossing, it's still fun. It's still enjoyable to me. But then also for the vast majority, but that's just for me. Now, for the vast majority of players, I think that, yeah, it's fine. But anyways, I've hit this point like 8 times. I don't need to keep doing it over it again.
Within Inferno, or fight caves, allowing speedrunners to run without being forced to kill goblins and cows. Forestry is woodcutting but with random events. It turned every main tree in the game into motherlode mine timed resource base, including redwoods for some reason, with incredibly high XP rates. The random events are as simple as clicking a log on the ground repeatedly. They simply add a huge chunk of XP for players willing to interact with them. The only draw to Forestry is the ability to do it with a large group of people. Increased XP makes you feel good as a player, but this update didn't add anything substantial gameplay-wise. Forestry worlds are still near full to this day. I'm not
didn't anything substantial gameplay-wise. I mean, that's a matter of opinion. I mean, like, most people play the game in a very, like, I turn off my brain and I click the tree every 10 seconds, and then when I get a full inventory of logs, I go bank it. That's the way that they engage it. So this is, like, some amount of stuff. I do think that some changes they made to Forestry kind of sucked. I do think that, like, for instance, like before when they had the sapling, like there's some small changes they could make which are actually really, they could have just kept in that would have been good, like the sapling event where it was in some cases optimal to actually just do the 70%. So like there's like the struggling sapling event, you'd find that you'd have to do this like really awful pathing to get to all the 3 ingredients which are necessary to make the sapling have the best mulch. Sometimes it's better to just do like 70% by getting like 2 of the ones you need than one like random one, some random drop, and it was like much faster pathing. You could do more mulches per like a minute, and that was more XP at probably the cost of a little bit of anima bark, which like honestly I was taking advantage of. I thought that was pretty cool. They should have kept that, because at least put some level of intricate depth that you could put into the game to like min max your XP per hour. The 3 ticking roots as a way to get like more anima bark, that's pretty cool. Leave that stuff in the game. That stuff's fun, you know? I think that stuff, like, it adds extra mechanical depth that you can engage with in order to gain extra XP that players can choose to engage with if they wish to, and if you don't want to do that, totally fine too. Who gives a shit? I actually thought Forestry overall was good. It added a lot of interesting content to the game, a lot of interesting stuff. It diversified woodcutting. Well, this is what I think, like I said, this is kind of like foreshadowing the solution I think Jagex is trying to get to, which is making content that all players can enjoy with singular updates. Forestry, if you choose to engage with the stuff which is more click intensive, slightly more in depth, maybe not super in depth, but slightly more in depth, makes it so that all players, so that if you wish to get to like do more stuff, you are rewarded. It's beneficial to players who are willing to be a little bit more intense, but it's also beneficial to players who just want to sit back and fucking chill and cut like a tree for 8 hours, and when the roots pop up, they click the roots, and some players don't even want to click the roots at all and just do the tree. It's fine. They made one update to account for a wide variety of game types. Granted, that's also bringing back, it's also the fact that that the update for Forestry had multiple purposes. It wasn't just to do that, to bring a new way to train woodcutting. It was also to bring back the social element of woodcutting, which, by the way, I'll be very honest with you, when Forestry came out, that first like couple of days, where we were all just hanging out was some of the most fun I've had in the game. Had a bunch of conversations with a bunch of random people, got into a bunch of arguments yelling at people about how the spawn mechanics of leprechauns worked. I remember doing that. That was kind of fun. Like, just a lot of fun to just meet a lot of interesting people, a lot of cool individuals I got to meet in the game, have funny conversations with. That was like super fun. And I wasn't even doing things super stressful. I was just chatting with people, like that fun MMO experience. I think that Forestry was a massive success and a massive boon to the game. It was like awesome addition to the game. Not high level PvP content. It made the game overall diverse and more rich, for sure. Like, this has been a benefit to the game, for sure. It's not high level. I understand that. But for the game itself, the health of the game makes the game better, in my opinion, 100%.
Not sure if this is mostly bots or if players are truly enjoying this update.
I guess I'm trying to, like, I guess on a level I'm trying to appeal to Gnomonkey to be like, I understand where you're coming from, but can you not at least acknowledge that the benefit these have had for the game, for sure? Like, these have had a benefit to the game overall.
Varied and interesting training methods.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like them. I agree, but like, I can give you 40 different options, but if they all are undesirable, if 39 of them are undesirable, like, I don't know, it just feels like, who are you catering to? That's my personal take.
KT for both great. Sulia Steps, Redwoods, Yews, and Blisterwood are all good ways of training with varying levels of intensity. This update has basically removed any reason to do Sulia Steps, as the Forestry tree will be the same or more XP per hour.
Is that true? I don't know if that's 100% true. I don't know if they actually are less XP. Secondly, don't Sulia Steps give you, like, fossils for prayer XP? And this is also just for mains, by the way. This argument is exclusively for mains, not for Iron Man. For Iron Man, there's absolutely an advantage to doing Sulia Steps to get that prayer XP. And, like, isn't there other stuff you can get too? I don't know. For collection log, it's also very valuable, because I get the pneumolites, which I use to get the pages and stuff like that. It's not a big thing, but, you know. I mean, like, it's a matter of perspective. Like, these have benefits to, like, decent amounts of players in the game and to a variety of different communities in the game. I don't think you can write it off as if it's, like, useless because it doesn't apply to one particular way of playing the game, or a very, like, limited set of players in the game, which is fine. I'm appealing to the perspective of trying to think about all the players of the game and think about, while you can disagree with, you can say that this isn't appealing to the high-level players and I wish we had more. Using these as arguments, it sounds like you're just kind of dismissing these ideas full out, saying that they're bad updates. It's like, well, wait a second. They're bad updates for one group of players. You know, like, these are good updates overall, and, like, I'm asking to, like, kind of, like, you know, take that into consideration, that, like, you might not like them. That's okay. They might not be for you, but that's a very big difference, and there are objectively bad updates. When in reality, it's like, no, it's not good for you, and you're saying that they're bad updates, and you're using that to bias, and you're falling prey to the idea that just means that they're bad updates overall. It's very understandable. Everybody does this. A lot of individuals feel like they confuse their feelings about something, their personal outlook and perspective on something, as if that's what everybody else thinks. It's like, dude, unfortunately, the world we live in literally encourages echo chambers and, like, very specific type of thinking, like very, like, reinforcing or like preying off our confirmation bias. Even independent of the world we live in, we have confirmation bias. We naturally have a tendency to seek out information that already confirms our pre-existing beliefs, because it's painful to try to change our already existing beliefs. It's, like, stressful and annoying and difficult. But, like, we're literally in an environment where if you go on your phone, the algorithm is designed to keep you there as long as possible. It's going to feed you things that already validate your already pre-existing worldview and that emotionally engage you and stuff like that to reinforce this particular view. If it kept showing you information you didn't agree with, you would just not use it. You would hate using it. And then we also tend to go towards communities of people that think like us, you know? Like, I remember, this is an example. I was doing Cox the other day, and I was doing the crab room with a guy, and he was flaming me in the game because I didn't know how to do the crab room efficiently. And I was like, my brother in Christ, you have 900 KC. Forgive me for not knowing how to do this, and it's like my third time seeing this room. Like, I was like, he just couldn't fathom for a second that maybe somebody didn't play the game the exact same way he did. And that I was coming from a completely different perspective. And that, like, it's not like it's my fault. I just didn't know how to do it. You know? And sometimes that just happens. Like, I remember one time a guy was like, "How do you not know how to skip the head phase?" And I'm like, "Bro," I told him, I was like, "I don't know how to do this. Let's not do this for Ohm because I don't know what the fuck you're talking about." And he's like, "Oh, just run and then like tank 2 on the side when I tell you to tank 2." It's like, dude, I am like barely paying attention to all the other mechanics going on. What the fuck are you talking about? And then I was posting in like the standard raid chat for We Do Raids, by the way. So this is very, like, for most of you probably even going to know what this is. In We Do Raids, which is a Discord server meant for helping find raid groups in RuneScape, and it's actually like I think as a concept, it's a very well made concept. They do a lot of things, like they do a really good job of getting players who don't know anything about this high level content in the game to get them into the game. So they do a great job for accessibility. They have like learners and workshop stuff, which is great, like learner raids where you can get a bunch of people who are still learning the game, and workshops where you can like learn from a mentor who has like tons of KCs, played it tons of time to help you walk through it to get your first couple of KC just to learn it. But then once you get a couple KC, then you go into the standard chat, which I think is the most populous. Maybe I'm wrong there, but it seems to be the most populated chat. But you go in there and you get like tons of people who are like really, really advanced, who've done raids since, because the raids have been out since 2016, right? 2016, 2017? Or 2017, 2018. People have like 1,000 KC, and you're sitting there, and then they're like asking you to do this stuff, and they are confused as to why you don't know how to do it. It's like, dude, you're in the standard chat. Like the KC requirement to be in this chat is like 5. You know, like I know how to beat Olm. I know how to kill the boss, and like I know what the specials are. I know that the head turns, but like this idea of doing weird moving mechanics to like avoid and skip a mechanic in the boss by like effectively glitching it, doing something that's unintended. Of course I have no fucking idea how to do that, you know? But some players just assume you know how to do this because they're so used to being inside their community that they've been in for years, doing the same thing over and over again, being around the same people who are all the same level of skill as them, and then they're confused that I don't know how to do this. It's like, dude, you're like literally in a different planet than I am. Like, chill. You know? Anyways,
This update
sorry.
simply rains XP down on everybody without adding anything substantial to the skill. RS3 receives update after update for their endgame PVM, and the best players in old school are left kicking sand. RS3 has loads of non-raid endgame PVM. There are 3 mini
But
raids tied
isn't like almost all of RS3 catered around their PVM now?
thing called elite dungeons. These are Diablo-esque dungeons with
I haven't looked at these all.
throughout,
I don't have
usually
much to
2
talk
smaller
about this.
bosses ending with a huge final boss. There are multiple difficult endgame raid bosses. The only thing OSRS has like this is Nex and Nightmare. They have Calfight King, Virago, Barrow's Rise of the Six, Solak. They even relatively recently added Zamorak as a massive raid boss.
Isn't like the RS3 team like way bigger, number 1, and then number 2 also like been around for a lot longer? I don't know.
They have tons of extremely difficult solo bosses, including Araxor, Zuck, Archglacior, and my favorite Telos.
But yeah, I mean, like how much? I don't have a lot of knowledge on RS3. I mean, if this is the case, that's cool and all. But like, I don't know. I think RS3 has like the base has built on this kind of idea and has a lot of the dev team to do this. Is what would be my guess. Then simultaneously, my other guess would be that RS3 also has how do I say this? Like old school RuneScape isn't trying to beat RS3. That was why people don't play RS3. They don't want to play this type of content. They want to play a game that has this diverse set of different experiences and stuff to play with. So yeah, we can't neglect all these other aspects of the game. That wouldn't be RS. What was RS then?
Includes Cox, Tob, and Inferno, and really that's where it ends. Where are the difficult non-raid bosses? Next is the best we can come up with for end-game team encounters. RS3 has so many great foundations to draw from, and we haven't really seen anything. If you want something to solo that's difficult, your options right now are CM and Inferno, and that's where it ends. You can solo Tob, but you have to tick for 15 minutes straight on P2. You can easily fix this by just making one red crab spawn like in hard mode. RS3 has ridiculously difficult solo bosses that scale in difficulty. Telos has a risk mechanic where you can leave the loot you've received in the chest and do another kill, increasing your loot modifier but risking the loot left inside. Also getting more difficult each kill.
It's a cool mechanic. I think they should absolutely introduce that for some bosses, 100%. I think that's, I think this is like agreeing the same thing. Like this is not a bad idea. This is going that same direction of making content that scales in difficulty. Like the better you are, the further, the more ways you could do it. There could be something interesting. Like we did this for Nex, right? For doing Nex encounters, you could be like people that can do 2 to 3 Nex kills. That's pretty cool. People that can do like 12 Duke kills in a row. And that's really cool, right? Versus doing like, there's no difference between doing like 5 Duke kills in a row versus 12 Duke kills in a row. Duke kills in a row. Now that'd be pretty cool. Like there's like a level of perfection and being very deliberate and stuff like that, which is very highly valued. You know, that could be very cool. You know,
4,000%. Archglacior has the same enrage meter to keep the difficulty increasing. Then, RS3 has some incredibly difficult full raid bosses that require multiple coordinated teammates like Solak or Zamorak. When you compare old school to RS3, we really don't look so great in comparison. RS3 has horrible problems like the microtransactions and dailies. This in combination with their lack of...
he already addresses this complaint a lot of people say. which is that I just like RS3, which is
Ultimately,
fair.
devs have total freedom to make things for endgame players. This has both ruined their game and allowed them to make some very cool bosses and pieces of content. RS3 is a complete mess, but there are many aspects that received love and polish. The old school team should be taking some of these incredible ideas, like telo streaking and raid bosses, and implementing them with the old school touch. QA in general has felt non-existent over the past year.
That's not a bad idea. Not a bad idea whatsoever. I 100% agree with this take. I think that's a totally valid point. Yeah, they could. This is a simple change that they could make that make the game more fun. He does give some genuinely very good points, which I think would be great, which would be an awesome change to the game. I agree with almost all that. Like, the question is, I have critiques about some of the way he presents information regarding content. That's about it. Quality of life stuff, I haven't disagreed with almost anything he said at all. I think it's all really good stuff.
Every update feels like it introduces some game-breaking bug. The most recent one was the rainbow text crashing people's client. We've seen some ridiculous bugs over the last year that seem acceptable only because it's RuneScape. They patched out red X throughout the entire game completely by accident.
Okay. Here's the part of the video I remember when I watched this, I didn't agree with at all. I was like, this feels completely irrelevant for the complaint of high-level players not getting what they need. This is just bugs and quality of life. And I think my belief as to why he left this in the video. Let's go over the whole thing and then I'll explain.
Which we righted in Falador over. If you missed it, it was a fun time. There was unlimited stamina inside of Inferno for about a week, requiring the Inferno speedrun Discord to stop accepting runs until it was patched. TOA introduced a bug where if your thrall is on top of something, its clickbox disappears, which is still unpatched. Hallowed Sepulchre had a bug where if you were 1 HP and wearing the Hallowed Ring, no traps would hit you. This was in-game for a week, and the record was annihilated by over a full minute. No one was banned, and the board has not been reverted. Barbarian Assault poisoning healers was broken for over 2 months. Ranged accuracy was broken when they released the beta prayers due to changes within said beta affecting the main game. The most ridiculous of all was the pathing bug that made you run in a boat arc when you ran diagonally, stalling you, which could have been tested by clicking anywhere a single time. At what point does this become unacceptable? Is it just okay because this game is old and we've just accepted it? It's okay that people's inventories were getting wiped at Gauntlet? It's acceptable that they literally broke Hunter when they released TOA, preventing you from catching anything? It's totally fine that the shadow accuracy was bugged and lower than it was supposed to be for multiple months. The Fang was similarly bugged for a couple weeks as well. Oh, Fasani wasn't able to drop any rare items for over 12 hours? I'm okay with that. It's actually easier to list the updates that didn't break something at this point than list the ones that do. I was so incredibly hopeful for TOA. It had been 4 years since...
Okay. I don't think personally, that whole section, I don't think it adds anything to his video, but only takes away from it. The point of this video is to express the... I think what it does is it conveys a certain sense of emotional frustration with Jagex's, or especially the OSRS's team, lack of concern or... It looks sloppy on the other stream. He's painting how frustrated he is that there's all these quality of life bugs and they're not being taken seriously. How does this relate to high-level content, high-level PVMing? Nothing. I don't think it relates at all to that stuff whatsoever. And also, by the way, I just realized this. High-level content doesn't just refer to... It can also be high-level skilling content. There really isn't that much of that. And there should be more, I feel like, for sure. There should be more. But that's just my personal take. Anyways. That stuff, I think, they're all fair points and criticisms to bring out, but that's just more like a criticism of Jagex in general, rather than like rather than it being like further evidence to prove that like the high level community is not being taken seriously and that they matter. It's just it overall detracts from the video. It adds the emotional content of like, absolutely, I get that you're frustrated with it, and I think it's totally fair, and I agree with everything you're saying, but it's completely, I don't think it's relevant at all to the conversation of what you're trying to bring about with the video from the logical point of view. It doesn't strengthen your argument whatsoever, in my opinion. They should fix it though.
And everyone was incredibly thirsty for content. Scaling invocations, this is their chance to add something for the entire player base. Something truly challenging for the veterans, should they want it,
right.
Something accessible for people to get into. And then TOA came out. And for that first week, I was still hopeful. This is an amazing base, they just need to clean it up a little bit. Instead, what we got is the mid-level raid. The raid not for us. The raid for people getting into raids only. Raising raid level doesn't make things harder or more interesting. It makes them hit harder and have more defense. It doesn't add mechanical depth. It makes the raid take longer. And that's it. For a while, it wasn't even worth going above 150 raid level for loot. I thought we would be getting additional interesting invocations that add instead of detract. I thought they would clean up some of the major issues with the raid, like Monkey Room. Instead, the raid was completely abandoned for many months. The changes they did make initially added the same amount of bugs as they fixed. I still have every bug and flaw I know of written down and cataloged.
I would like to see this. Because I remember reading some of these and thought these aren't bugs. These are just disagreements, by the way. But, trying to think. No, I can't. I can never spell this damn name. No monkey. Paste bin TOA. I see below for full paste bin. I'm looking. I don't see it. The autumn. Okay. This is actually gonna bring up a point I was gonna bring up at the very end of the video. We'll talk about this in a bit. The autumn elegy arc. 100% agree. Not 100% agree. Sorry, that's a little bit too extreme. What I was saying. But I was gonna bring this up. This is actually really funny that some guys don't notice this. Okay, I can't find it. We'll read a couple of these. Because they're interesting. But okay, going over his whole TOA point here. I 100% agree with him that TOA is. Oh, I need to text my girlfriend quickly. Let her know I will be there at. One second. Anyways, sorry. Okay, here we go. TOA complaints. He is 100% right. Relative to the other raids, TOA is by far the easiest. And the invocation system, which I think in theory, really good idea. Make it accessible on a certain level, but then also allow it to be scalable for all levels of content. I like it. The problem is many of the mechanics that are added through the invocations do not really change much of the raid. There's not a lot of strategy or depth that comes into it. There's a lot that could be done to make it better, but it's just really frustrating how some of the raids just aren't, like, some of the TOA stuff just isn't very, like, interesting. Like, a lot of the raid level, all it does is just make the bosses have higher defense, higher health, and more attack. That's really the major impact of what it does. Sure, they add some things, but they're not that big. Like, not just a head, which adds blood magic to Zebek, is just not that big of a deal. The one that splits the blood orbs into different spawns does literally nothing. Upset stomach is kind of bad. It adds a little bit of depth to it, but not that much ultimately, because remember, when you're doing Zebek, there's not like a lot going on at the same time. It's kind of like you're attacking, you dodge the blood orbs, you're swapping prayers, no big deal. The waves come, those are pretty easy to dodge most of the time. Especially if you know how to wave skip. Then they become stupid easy, in my opinion. If you know how to do the poison stuff, then there's the hiding behind the rocks. It's just like, oh, I'm done doing one thing, now I'm going to do another thing. There's not like a lot of multitasking, which would make Zebek a little bit more fun. That's like an example. Baba literally would probably be more fun with more mechanics, but you just have to bypass all of it by doing Red X, because once you get above a certain level of raid level, she just does so much damage through prayer, you can't fight her. Akka, you have to do butterfly method once you get to high enough invocations, and then the regular fight in general just isn't really that deep outside of butterfly method. There's a couple of mechanics that really require you to actually change what you're doing, those being feeling special and double trouble. That requires you to actually have to do like a lot of pretty interesting stuff. Wardens, once you get good enough at them, insanity is required, or they're just really fucking boring. P3 wardens. It's a shame. Like a lot of the mechanics just don't change a significant amount of stuff about the raid. The biggest change that they make is the difficulty increase, which is that for every 5 raid level, I think the bosses increase their stats by 2%. So you're just left in a lot of situations where really ultimately changing the raid level just makes the bosses slightly do more damage, and then that's why you end up doing Red X on Baba, because then Red X method avoids all damage from Baba. That's why you do the Butterfly method on Akka, because it avoids all damage on Akka. Because you have to, because they do damage through prayer that does like 30s through fucking prayer, and you would lose all your fucking supplies, and it wouldn't be possible to do after a while. So yeah, I understand where they're coming from. I understand this a ton. And they never really got updated. They never added newer mechanics that actually required a lot of skill or depth into it, which they should have.
TOA is not fun at a high level.
Now, oh yeah, sorry. A lot of these updates, a lot of these points he makes here, I can't see the whole thing because it's not linked, but the full thing here, some of these are just not really that, they're not, some of them are bugs, but some of them are just complaints of the general. He presents it as that these are all bugs. Throw step attack when Dunk comes out. That's a bug. Bone Dagger only works if somebody else is attacking the boss first. That's a bug. Kefri has no real threat or engagement mechanics. It's walk back and forth. That's not a bug. That's just a dislike with it. A very valid one, but yeah. Arcane Scare Clickblock Flickers if Agile's path under it. Bug. Arcane Scare with an RG will let DPS unavoidable damage if fail. I don't like it for sure. I 100% agree with this take. Not a bug though. Zebek. In some gear invos, managing Zebek is best, but you can't mage the jugs to clear acid. I don't think that's a bug. It just doesn't really matter that much to me. This doesn't really feel like a bug to me. During the wave, the layout that causes the gap to only be in his melee range, forcing you to either be... Isn't his melee range directly in... Oh, during... Either wave skip or a melee hit. There's a layout. That's a bug, I think. Blood Barrage is 50-50 on raid level 1 or 4+ whenever it chips you. It can happen to be already protecting mage. Adds chip damage that heals cost with no... Sure, I agree with this take. Pushing the jugs causes you to stall for a tick prevent. This is a bug, for sure. Bloodstone's going to be blocked by barricades. That's a bug. So there's a couple of bugs here, but some of them are just not bugs. This one was not a bug at all to me. Blood All spawns also have 2 safe spots at the edge of the ramp. This isn't a safe spot. Let me be clear. The mechanic is you need to run away from the blood spawns, right? So you run away very far from the blood spawns such that they die before they get to you. Is that a safe spot, or is that you did the mechanic correctly? I mean, like, at the same token, he's not thinking about this. I think if you run all the way southeast or southwest, I don't remember the exact word. If you're facing Zebek and you run all the way to, like, if Zebek is here and you run here or here, don't the blood spawns also die on the way to you? Are those safe spots? I don't know if I'd call those safe spots. Those are just you're avoiding the mechanic. You're properly doing the mechanic, which is getting away from the blood spawns. I think one way, if you want to fix this, which I think you absolutely should, in my opinion, this is what they should do, is make the blood spawns have a little bit more health, or make it so you have to actually do damage to the blood spawns. That'd be pretty interesting. Like, there's a lot of changes you could make that would absolutely improve the raid, for sure. A lot of people come up with really interesting ideas for how to change the raid around to make it more interesting. But I've yet to see them being made, which is unfortunate. Wardens and solo raids offers really no mechanics, you just stand there and AFK. True. I also don't like in solo mechanics just having to tank the orbs. That's really fucking boring to me. They should do more. If you tank less than 3 orbs on either side, it gives you the other warden, and there's a safe spot on the left side of the arena where it allows you to avoid the UFOs entirely. That's true, there is, which is kind of wild to me. Aka Kefri Warden is far worse choice in every conceivable way. Yes, it is. It is a worse warden. They should make it to where both are desirable, but yeah. Has a larger AoE with aerial assault. Yeah. P3 Warden is a walking simulator. It's not a bug, but it's true. P4, there are times where lightning spawn on every tile. Not at the same time. Like, yeah, there is always a way to avoid it. And sometimes I think, like, sometimes it can be a mechanic in game to have something that's unavoidable, but, like, learn how to mitigate, like, the consequences of it. Like, that's totally fine. There's a really interesting boss fight in... Do you ever play Kingdom Hearts? And like the hard bosses, like the Data Org fights or whatever. A lot of those bosses have unavoidable damage in them, but reliable ways in which to deal with that unavoidable damage. And I feel like, and there's a lot of the fight is like learning how to like deal with, like, so for example, Kingdom Hearts 1, which isn't the favorite of a lot of people. By the way, story sucks in that game. It's fucking awful. All those games have shit story, but the combat's kind of fun in my opinion. So I'm not going to talk about well, that's a whole other argument we can get into. Kingdom Hearts 1, fighting Sephiroth. Sephiroth is a really, really hard boss in Kingdom Hearts 1, especially on like the hardest difficulty. But and the way he works is there's called, like, I think they're called revenge values. So I think it's if you do either 4 attacks in one combo or 7 attacks total before he hits you without taking damage from him, he will automatically enter into a move that is unavoidable and will do damage to you. Now you might be saying, that's really cringe, but you can plan out what you're doing. You can either do the 4 attack combo, or you can deliberately be like, I'm going to do 3 attacks, space, 3 attacks, then do a single attack and prepare to be attacked like automatically. And a lot of the way you fight is based off of understanding that he's going to do this and deliberately because his AI is very predictable in that sense, you use that to then make decisions about like, okay, I'm going to purposely attack him at this point in order for him to hit me because I have the means to heal myself up using the cure spell at this time. You time things out in such a way. Well, that's not bad. That's fun. Like, unavoidable mechanics, unavoidable damage can be fun if you know how to plan around it, and how the part of the strategy is planning around that stuff. It's when it's too much that it becomes kind of cringe, or it's completely unpredictable and stuff like that.
Bug and flaw I know of written down and cataloged, over 50 of them. TOA is not fun at a high level. Akka is difficult because he can combo you with 270 damage splats if you make a mistake at an unlucky time. Baba is difficult because you need to learn how to red X to avoid the entire fight, or it's impossible. Warden is difficult because if you're standing on the corner of the skull AoE attack on P2, it pulls your prayer off and it hits you a 50, likely killing you. The entire raid lacks the interesting depth that Chambers and Tob has for improvement. How do you improve your technique at Kefri? Walk back and forth better? How do you improve at Baba? The best I've found is learning to spin my camera while doing red X because I have nothing better to do.
Based.
The raid is boring. I never feel like I've learned something new after completing a raid. Tob has incredible mechanical depth. There's something new to learn at every encounter, every single raid. Hitting the ceiling on Tob is almost impossible. It is so intricate. Inferno's the same. It's incredibly similar to chess. There's a correct way to solve every single wave, but there's such a ridiculous amount of permutations that learning these in their entirety is almost impossible. I miss the feeling of digging into a piece of content and being driven to learn everything in order to improve. That feeling of mastery is so incredibly satisfying.
That's fair.
And putting that effort into something that gives appropriate rewards just doesn't exist anymore. The best GP an hour in the game is still next. After that, it's TOA. They aren't good money because they're the hardest thing in the game. The hard content are dead horses being beaten in by the high-level player base out of desperation for something to chew on. With the release of Desert Treasure 2 came potential and disappointment. The Duke, which is literally a wall you fight with a scaling portion before you can actually fight it. Vardorvis.
I don't like Duke that much. A lot of people seem to like not mind it. I feel like I can do like maybe 10 kills of Duke before I start to like zone out. But I do appreciate the addition of all these bosses. I think that they have added to the game rather than taken away, by the way. I want to make that clear. That's where my position is.
Tiles, Whisperer, which doesn't even damage you throughout the entire fight, and
a lot of people don't like Whisperer. I actually like Whisperer quite a bit. Other ones like, I hate the sandy mechanic. I've like never had issues with it, not once. And I personally just really like the boss. I think it's fun. I like the idea. I like the animations of it. I like the style of it. I like the being able to avoid all the damage if you're playing very well. I like that type of reward in a game. Leviathan, I like and I don't like Leviathan. Anyways, this is irrelevant. I'm going on a tangent. I do like a lot of the Desert Treasure 2 bosses. I think Desert Treasure 2 overall was a success for the game and did bring a lot of pros to the game. And I think that the way they handled the Awakened system and the reward system is actually a way to benefit high-level players. They're rewarding playing perfectly. Playing perfectly seems to improve, as they're not taking any avoidable damage, seems to reward you by giving you increased rewards, increased loot. That's really cool. The second thing, so a lot of people that was posting, like, I got 17 bronze arrows. It's like, my brother in Christ, that's just a self-report that you fucking got your ass kicked by the boss, you know? So avoiding the damage and is getting a lot of money is really rewarding. And the second thing is the Awakened versions of the bosses. Now, I don't necessarily like the way the Awakened system works. I don't like having to pay such an insane amount of money to do these things. My personal opinion. It's such an insane amount of money to do these things. But I do think that this is the direction that Jagex has been trying to go, and I do think it is a successful direction. Making content that is accessible for a portion of the player base, and then allowing it to be scalable to higher difficulties, because it saves time for the Jagex developers not have to design exclusively high-level content. They can make low-level content that scales up in difficulty to high-level players, so they're also left satisfied, because it means something to do I do Duke versus I do Awakened Duke, or I do Vardorvis versus I do Awakened Vardorvis. That's a big difference, and those talk about different levels of skill, and there's a lot of strategies and stuff like that to min-max that. I think that probably they could learn, in the cases of things like Vardorvis, there's differences in the way that you path, but there isn't as much like decision making and stuff like that all the time, which is kind of frustrating. Leviathan, there is a lot of decision making in Awakened Leviathan with regarding like, where am I going to place the boulders? Like, how am I going to? I have to intentionally shadow barrage at this point or this point. You know, that's like really cool. And they need more of that type of stuff in the game. A lot of stuff that really rewards high level decision making and stuff like that for sure. But I think this direction of the game is good, because what ends up happening is that they can make content for one level of the game while also I'm talking really fast, sorry, because I have to get going. I have to get through this video. It rewards one aspect of the player base while also simultaneously rewarding another aspect of the player base, which is the high level. And they only have to make one update for it, because they can just change some mechanics around for the high level player base without having to do too much, which is good.
Leviathan, which is just stand in place and swap prayers with the occasional barrage to get behind him. There was a real issue with the ring drops where none were dropping. There was not a single Ultor ring, which is the Berserker ring, dropped on day 1. One of the drops I received...
Wasn't that because they like changed the mechanics around to where like you need to get... Like it's like really unlikely that you're gonna see like people get spooned? I mean like, yeah, just I don't think that's anything broken with it at all. At least I don't think they ever confirmed that was a bug.
Bronze javelins. In 100 Vardorvis kills, I've averaged roughly 25 KGP a kill, half as much as a demonic.
So honestly, can I be blunt with you? With doing Duke, when I... What's my Duke, Casey? This isn't even taking like into account like my actual profit, because like the last 100 Duke kills, I think I've gotten over 100 Duke kills. I've gotten probably like 6 mil, I would say, 7 or 8 mil or something like that. That's like, yeah. Duke is not bad. Like they're not bad money per hour. They're not bad drops. It's just you have to play well in some cases.
Aiza explained on day 2 on the Q&A that they actually use a unique drop system for the rings. You need to roll a ring 3 times in order to actually receive it as a drop.
Dude, the amount of brain dead commentary I heard on this drop system just kills me. It was not that hard to understand, I felt like, and people were taking this shit so out of context. I'm sorry. That's just a personal thing. I think a lot of players got this shit so confusing. Like, this looks so much more complicated. It's really... Yeah, I don't know.
Effectively, this is a shard system from Muzzbuff or Venator Bow, except the shards are invisible and untradeable. Really, it's more similar to Sire's Bludgeon. This system heavily encourages you to camp one boss, as you may be getting close to a ring drop, or maybe not, because you can't see if you have any shards. Meanwhile, the Soul Reaper axe requires an untradeable hilt piece from each of the 4 bosses. This means when you get an axe piece, you're forced to choose. Do you keep grinding that boss to potentially get a ring, or actually move on and start working on the
But like, again, at the end of the day, what is the complaint about the lack of high-level content? Like, the whole point of the video at the beginning was all led up to, like, they're ignoring the high-level community. This is just, I'm mad at Jagex for updates, and I'm getting mad. Like, I don't know, it just feels like ranty and pointless, which is fine. I can agree with you on these things. I just don't think it's practical for the video's purposes.
And it prevents them from going dry as well.
So I'm going to skip past this, because it doesn't feel like it's relevant at all.
Were released much earlier than expected, which very much so worried me. I felt like this would be a rush job just to appease people that were complaining. Would these just be slight cookie cutter?
Oh, he's talking about awakened versions of the bosses, by the way.
Variations? Yeah, Vardorvis will probably shoot a magic attack and a ranged attack. Oh no, how horrible. About 20 orbs, expecting to kill them all without issue. I finished Whisperer in 2 orbs without a single problem, exactly as I expected, incredibly easy. Duke took me around 7 or 8 orbs. The fight is somehow more awful than the normal variant. It took me 7.5 minutes to finally kill him. Vardorvis took 12 orbs and was surprisingly decent, with a lot of precise rapid clicks required to clear.
What was the problem with it, though? Like, were they hard, though? They weren't very appealing, I guess, is like, I guess the major point is, like, saying they're not very appealing to do anything.
But still not quite the challenge I was hoping for. Then I got to Leviathan.
On 1.5 speed, he looks cracked out here. He looks like he's under the influence.
Yes, 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 yes. Oh, yes! It's genuinely the best addition to the game since TOB. This is the hardest piece of content Jagex has ever intentionally added, yet it's completely fair and doesn't rely on heavy RNG factors. It's incredibly difficult, and you need to execute perfectly to get through it. He drops a larger pile of rocks each roar, filling the arena over time. And
I do like Leviathan a lot. I think it's fun.
Making any mistake punishes you with around 50 damage or more. After stunning, he drops 10 rocks on your location, each tick filling the arena further. At 50% HP, he spawns a tornado that follows your location like P3 Verzik that hits you for 50 damage.
I think we need to do a better job explaining, though, like, why this type of content... One thing I'd like him to do a better job of, for his sake, to maybe help clarify to, like, devs. Maybe they already know this, I don't know. Like, what about Leviathan works so well that makes this good to him versus, like, Duke or Maiden, right? I think that to him, it's... I'm going to put words in his mouth, I'm guessing, is that the intense amount of planning, the stress, the difficulty of it just is unmatched. Maiden, there isn't really much, it's just there's not really much that changes. There's not like a lot of difficulty in planning and stuff like that that comes into the way, you know? Duke, same thing. Vardorvis, same thing.
You to run around the arena, but also be
maybe planning isn't... I'm not trying to say planning is the only thing that matters, it's a part of it.
Where you stack rocks as you swap prayers each tick. Finally, at that final 20% HP, he spawns that damage orb and starts hailing 1-tick prayer orbs relentlessly. You need to do about 600 damage to Leviathan while avoiding that tornado, flicking prayers each tick, keeping inside the orb to protect yourself from 25 chip damage per 1-tick orb, while also attacking the boss quickly enough the falling rocks don't fill the entire arena. It is the ultimate challenge. Nothing in the game comes close. This section is far harder than 6 Jad. The entire fight needs to be carefully planned in order to leave yourself the most possible room. At no point does it feel like a slog or waste of time. Everything culminates to that final challenge. You need to have played perfectly up to that point to even have a chance of survival. Awakened Leviathan took me 40 orbs, and that's far less than most have taken. Completing Awakened Levi is far harder than any combat achievement. I would argue it's probably harder than a Pillarless Inferno or solo TOB. I was amazed the Jagex I know would add anything of this caliber. It's not perfectly designed and intricate, and I know not a single JMod killed it probably, but it takes some serious courage to release something this difficult and hope the player base finds a way to deal with it. This is the kind of challenge I've always wanted. Now, unfortunately, these are a complete waste of time.
I do like that he is a little bit balanced in giving credit where credit's due and saying that like this is a great update. That's good.
And are only for the Blood Torva cosmetics. My reward for killing Leviathan, the hardest boss to date, was 51 rune arrows.
This is also true. I do think that they need to add more reason to do these bosses. Like, I like the direction. I like the idea of having these bosses in the game conceptually. Like the idea of having this, but he's 100% right here that there needs to be a reason to fight them. Some motivation, you know, something besides just one time. And then also, them being so prohibitively expensive is just so frustrating to do, in my opinion.
Was 100 misrunes. Once you kill all 4, that's likely the last time you'll ever kill them. Even when the orbs
Which is a shame.
have value, these will absolutely never even make up the cost of the orbs to fight. I love that they were willing to do something like this. I hope this gets Jagex to consider adding some scaling content that is truly rewarding at the top end. Imagine if Leviathan was actually lucrative to kill if you could kill him consistently with great reward. I love that idea of risking a huge entry cost for a potentially huge boon if you were good enough. If these had a 1 out of 10 to 1 out of 20 chance of hitting the rare table, that 2.5 mil entry cost might actually be worth it if you were consistent. Leviathan isn't exactly as difficult as a 4,000% Telos in RS3, which took 13.5 months to be killed for the first time, but it is a step towards that, and I love to see it. Leviathan gives me hope that there is still potential for good PVM updates. I see a glimmer of light in the distance. I've been collecting feedback from anyone willing to provide it in my Discord. The questions I asked were, are you happy with the state of the game? If you could make change, what would be your priority? What makes the game fun for you?
I'm trying to think if this is even really worthwhile to cover this part here. Trying to remember if it's really even relevant, because this video is really going to be like an hour and a half, and I have to get going pretty soon here. So I feel like, fuck. Oh, we'll watch it, we'll watch it.
I've gotten some amazing feedback from players of all different skill levels and backgrounds. Everyday players and some of the absolute best. The point is to show that we do exist, and we do care. I've heard from so many people, you're a tiny percentage of the player base, you don't deserve content. I'm really getting tired of hearing, when there's so many of us desperate for change. I'm just going to pick some of them that resonated with me and read them here. Sax writes, are you happy with the state of the game? I've been unhappy with the state of the game ever since a little after next release. If you could make change, what would be your top priority? Adding a single piece of engaging, difficult team PVM content. Creating a Discord server for high-level PVM feedback, akin to the one that exists for PKers, some tweaks to TOA, and a monthly new invocation. What makes this game fun for you? The emergent gameplay. How much simple rules in PVM can result in such high-scale expressive opportunities. I want to do solo and team PVM content and push them to their limits. I just love theory crafting ways to overcome bosses, complete them faster, failing many, many times in the name of getting better for a boss that I feel is engaging is the best feeling in this game for me. Moving perfectly while switching gear and keeping track of attack cooldowns and prayers and other factors really adds depth and difficulty in an engaging way for me and keeps me hooked. Always thinking about playing. What makes this game unenjoyable for you? Vertical gear upgrades. Monotonous activities with an XP incentive. Most scaling is just click the same 2 to 10 spots until the number hits 13 million. Feeling like my feedback isn't being heard or addressed whatsoever. Being alone in my enjoyment of aspirational PVM content, which is a consequence of friends quitting the game due to lack of updates as well as a lack of group bossing in general. I like playing efficiently, so if it's much more efficient to do something alone than in a group, that's what I'll do, as much as it sucks to play alone. Sam Squantus writes, are you happy with the state of the game? Not currently happy with the state of the game from a Raider's perspective. TOA doesn't really hit, the invocations are underwhelming, I'm looking at you, Insanity, and the raid isn't satisfying to complete. TOB seems like the only fun thing to do in-game for me. Whatever happened to Tascal Trials, the Blue Inferno? If you could make changes, what would be your top priority? I would adjust TOA invocations to complement high skill ceiling, skillful play, and be fun to complete.
Oh, just for some players who don't really know. This looks actually really sick. This was, I think, released as part of the game jams. This looked fucking sick. It was... Jagex Husky made this. I think Husky was responsible for some of the boss designs, I believe. He's a content developer, Dress, work on Group Iron Man. I'm wrong here. I'll have to listen. This might be a range. I didn't know this was even might be interesting to listen to. Oh, completionist stuff. That's pretty cool. Completion cape. Oh, I thought this was gonna be like combat collection log. I'm like, that's cursed. That's pretty cool though. He's doing a lot of interesting stuff in this game for sure. Anyways, I'm sorry. I'm gonna stop looking. But Tascal Trials is pretty interesting. It's an update that was proposed as essentially like a roguelite for RuneScape, which would be pretty sick. Old school RuneScape third wave based minigame, but very distinct to both Fight Caves and Inferno, which is awesome. I think the theming's cool, all that stuff, but it's inside the Mount Kurloom. 1 to 4, 5 to 8, like different waves and stuff like that. Each non-boss wave, players must select either debuff themselves or debuff out to the enemy creature Like, that's pretty cool. They've granted it depends on the buffs. It can't just be like, we're going to increase the damage of the enemies. That's just not fun after a while. Yeah, it's very slimmed down. No free waves, no like really boring like bat waves and stuff like that. Yeah, I like this a lot more. I like emphasis on decision making stuff. I do like tick perfect. I like tick perfect prayer manipulation is somewhat good. Movement is very important in my opinion. I like that a lot too. But yeah, blah, 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 blah. It's not that interesting. But like a bunch of enemies and stuff like that. Mentality, which had to be a discussion. I think it's cool. It's cool. I think overall it was an awesome. That was a pretty awesome idea. I really hope it does come into the game, but we'll see. Summer Summit, people are praying for it to come in, but
more
we'll see.
communication methods from high-level PVMers. Currently, it seems like there is a disconnect between high-level PVMers and Jagex. I would consider enrage mechanics for bosses similar to RS3 if there is a place for them. I'm a big fan of pushing the limits of the game to become a better player. It promotes the longevity of the game.
I think this idea of enrage mechanics is not a bad idea for sure, and like those like risk reward potential stuff. Like some of like I said, some of the quality of life ideas that they've come up with in this video, almost every single one of them, good ideas, nothing wrong. They should absolutely make this, and these are very simple changes that would absolutely go a long way to fixing a lot of problems in the game and would make the game better overall. The question is just some of the other stuff in this video I think makes it a little bit more confused than I think it should be.
PVM makes the game fun for me, specifically raids. That's why top is my favorite content. I like to challenge myself, but I don't like annoying details like high defense. I'm looking at you, CM Tecton, and RNG mechanics like Maiden Blood. Improving at the game, helping others how to improve.
I'm gonna keep going.
The direction this game has taken updates.
I don't think there's much to talk about here. It's just generally the same. Like they're upset that there's a lack of quality. Like, oh yeah, what makes the game unenjoyable for you? Bad servers, ping. Be the most unenjoyable factor about the game, and I wish this issue got more attention content-wise. Probably seems the direction this game has taken. The balance of all Iron Man quality of life mid-game updates instead of catching catering towards the endgame, allow players burnt, quitting, etc. Yeah, I can understand that, but like, just the majority of the player base, they have to cater to these people. Like, and it's not like it's a bad thing. It's like, even I enjoy these mid-level things too, to some degree, as someone who's even in some cases past them. You know. I get it, but I just think that's like they're also the vast majority of the player base. I'm not saying like put up with it, like you know what I mean. I understand that, but like I also think there has to be some sort of consideration. Like I think this is fair. Like you can argue from your opinion, this is why I don't want to play the game anymore. It just feels like there's not any more updates for me. The issue would be the conclusion of they need, so therefore they need to do that more. It's like I don't know if that's necessarily the conclusion. That would be the fifth question I'd probably ask. By the way, he asks but this section, by the way, he asks just to kind of give you guys some background. Oh yeah, he made this like thing in his Discord, like a bunch of testimonials basically, and people answered them, a bunch of high level players or whatever. And there's 4 questions that he asked. Are you happy with the state of the game? If you could make a change, what would be your top priority? What makes this game fun for you, and what makes that game unenjoyable for you? And he reads obviously these different testimonials of people of different and what their answers are to these questions. But the 5th question to me, which I think is like probably the most important question, is what do you think Jagex should do? Like, do you think Jagex should change anything about their current philosophy and strategy? And I don't know if you'd find as much consensus, because like the truth of the matter is like, ultimately, like, I can be of the opinion that like I understand where these people are coming from emotionally, and I do think that like yeah, I think there should be. I like doing difficult content. I think that'd be fun to add more stuff to the game for sure. But like, would I give up all the other content that we've gotten for that? I don't know if I would. I don't think I would. I think I can step back and say, oh, I can look at where all the other player base is, and then say I do think that these people deserve that type of stuff, and we should be catering towards like that group of players as well. I think that the current strategy of trying to make content that starts off being at a low level, but then also simultaneously can be scaled up by adding additional mechanics or whatever on with like this awaken systems or invocation systems. Granted, those need to be refined for sure. Is the best path forward because it can cater to both high-level players and mid-level players by using a singular update and only adding a couple of extra mechanics where necessary. That way it can appeal to the needs of all those player bases with like it's like the most efficient way to do it. I feel like to cater to all the needs of a wide variety of players. But like I'm not going to get rid of Forestry just because like we need more high-level content. I think that Forestry was overall a benefit to the game. Stuff like that, for instance. Yeah, that's my personal take.
And what makes the game unenjoyable for you? I've gotten some amazing feedback from players of all different skill levels and backgrounds. Everyday players.
But he's only highlighting like high-level players. For almost all these people talking, it's exclusively speedrunners, high-level content creators, high-level PvPers or PVMers. No PvPers, no PVMers, no like average skillers and stuff like that at all, which is kind of frustrating. It's a very the pains he gives and says that this is representative of the vast majority of the player bases, or he says he's got a whole bunch of players from a wide variety of things. Oh, sorry, that's not what he says. To make it very clear, what he does say is the selection of comments he picks throughout the video to demonstrate here or testimonials he gives or shares are ones that he find resonate with him. Fair. That's totally fine to do that. But is that at all indicative of what the vast majority of the player base thinks? I don't think so. And they all have a say in this game.
Changes, what would be your top priority? Absolute top priority is making more hard PvM. Inferno, where some minor. Being forced to spend.
I'm not skipping this or skip. I have to get going. So I'm just trying to get through these quickly.
There's been so many responses I can't read all of them.
So here's all the responses. There's some. You see a variety of interesting ones. Fuck no, I ain't happy. Need more challenging content that will spice up content. Shadows effect. All content. Playing with friends. Going for endgame goals. Stagnation. What were the 4 questions again? I gotta look at them again. 952. Are you happy with the state of the game? If you could make change, what would be your top priority? What makes this game fun for you? This game unenjoyable for you? If you can make a change, what would be your top priority? What would be your top priority for you? Are you happy with the current state of the game? Not really. After doing it further, there's nothing left except repetitive raids with layers of issues. You can make a change. What would be your top priority? Creative and changing, challenging PvM, being more thoughtful, blood content. What makes the game fun for you? Interesting, well thought out content. Iron Man. Iron Man's a lot of stuff. Well, lol, unless he's joking. I think Iron Man's actually pretty good. Unenjoyable overview. TOA, CM, Cox, bugs, boring updates, like a creative thoughtfulness. I think there's actually a lot of creativity. That's why I'm shocked. Not particularly, I'm new to OSRS and I'm enjoying the content I have to access and to be honest, but I think the healthy game state is positive for all members. Is positive for another thing that's also important to remember, by the way. The people that are posting in Gnomonkey's community are people that all generally agree with his takes. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing this. So to make like a more fair thing would be to like serve people from communities that you don't agree with. Go to like the level 3 skillers Discord. Go to like the Ultimate Iron Man Discord. Not to like get just those, but like just get a more diverse set of opinions. I think they'd all have very different opinions about the game for sure. If his unfortunately, like I said, the one thing that sucks about this video, that sucks a little bit about it, is I just don't think. I think it's a video that I think could have been a lot more effective if he just focused on here's the feelings of the high level players, here's why they feel like they're being neglected, here's some quality of life changes they could make that are super simple and that's demonstrative of the fact that they aren't taking us seriously, and like left it at that. But he brings in a bunch of stuff that I just think sometimes unfortunately weakens his argument. And additionally, it's like if they just left it at that, here's my opinion, here's why I think the game needs to be better, but like we can discuss about this, that's fine. And but I think if he also acknowledged, I think that like, does he think that these updates in general have been beneficial for the game as a whole? I don't know. I don't know if he does, and that's the one thing I just disagree with wholeheartedly.
As a place to leave thoughts. We don't really have any other outlet. I love old school RuneScape. It's my favorite game I've ever played. I have over 13,000 hours played in old school alone, a similar amount in RS3. I feel like what I love about this game is starting to slip, and it scares me. That feeling of running downstairs when I was a kid to the new RuneScape update full of excitement feels like a distant memory. Every time something gets announced, I'm hesitant to get my hopes up out of fear that I'll be forgotten once again. I want this game to grow and flourish like it did back in 2017 and 2018, with incredible knockout edition after knockout edition. Players like Wooks are long gone due to a lack of content, and it really is disheartening. Watching those massive streams of people like Wooks and Bodhi attempting Inferno on the first days of release to tens of thousands of viewers were truly incredible. Those first top streams of people trying ridiculous gear setups to try and get through it.
I watched one of these the other day, the first top streams. That shit's hilarious to watch. Watching people like attempt these like pieces of content with like, you know what the fuck they're doing is just the funniest thing. Like if you actually watch it, they're all using T-bows on Berserk. Which is like, what the fuck are they doing? I mean, obviously they didn't know any better at the time, but it's just so funny to me that that's the way that they were fighting Berserk. It's just like, holy shit, that's so funny to me. When you watch it, it's like it's just hilarious. Because no one knew any better.
Without knowing anything, we still exist, and we want to be heard. Adding more content like Awaken Leviathan for us to challenge, and content that scales up into those difficult ranks is a struggle we are craving. It's the content that we are looking forward to, and hope Jagex continues to create for the community. That's it for the video. I've never asked for this before, but please try to spread this video around as much.
Please go ahead and try to share this video around.
I desperately want some change for this game I truly love.
Okay. Cool. I think he's a very... I think overall, while I have critiques of the video, I think overall, I think he should... it's a hard video to make very concisely and coherent and like very like perfectly and saying the same concept the entire time for 30 minutes, but I think he did a pretty decent job. Like I said, I've given many of my critiques throughout the entirety of the video. I think from an emotional perspective, from a plea, the idea that there needs to be higher, harder, more difficult content in the game. I understand that perspective. I think I would take objection with some of the claims he made regarding the fact that some of the content that's in the game is not good overall or not very interesting. I disagree with that take. One, I think that's a matter of perspective. I do think I can understand. I agree with his assessment that objectively across the entire game, there just hasn't been as many things the same caliber of difficulty as like Cox, TOB, Inferno, and Awakened Leviathan. I 100% agree with that take. Do I think that's necessarily a bad thing? I don't think so inherently, because I think that you can also have things that don't have to be mechanically super complex to also be very valuable to the game or a good addition to the game overall. There's a lot of different types of players, all of them different types of skill levels, and not just like PVM. We could talk about just like, Forestry, Guardians of the Rift, Leagues, Group Iron Man. These are all things which are changes to the game, not in the complexity or difficulty of the game really, but simultaneously also quite fun and very enjoyable and bring a lot of interest to the game and diversity to the game. Those are all valuable to the game, and I don't think I would trade them away for the sake of getting a couple extra high-level bosses or high-level pieces of content that only would be accessible to a small number of players. Like truly an extremely small number of players. Especially because he's not even really appealing to just people that try these contests. Like, I can do Cox. I don't think I'm ever going to do Cox speedrunning until I go for maybe... Like, my ultimate end goal in this game is a Zuck Helm. That's like my ultimate end goal. That's going to take me still a very fucking long time to go for. Well, that and plus getting like a really big collection log. That's like my like eventual end goal is getting all the drops from all the monsters in the game, excluding clues and maybe LMS, because I don't really have much of an interest in LMS. But every one of those drops is something that's a goal for me. That's going to take a very fucking long time to go for. The clue one, because like they're just meme drops. Like getting a fucking third age pickaxe and all the other shit is just a meme drop. But anyways, that's for me. Am I going to be speedrunning? I don't think so. I don't think I have much of an interest in it. Maybe one day I'll try it just for funsies, but I don't really think it's an eventual goal of me. So he's talking about people that are like the most intense hardcore gamers, and it's like I don't think it's fair to jeopardize or not cater to make content exclusively for these people that is just leaving all these other people in the dust. I think that the current method of what Jagex is doing is actually going down the right path, making content that is appealable to a very large selection of players while also giving the difficulty for it to be more difficult to really, really high-level players, is good. All the quality of life updates he made, I 100% agree with all of them. I think they're all really good. It's just disagreements about the content and direction of the game, or what really the conclusion of what Jagex should be doing is. I don't 100% agree with. And then like I said, there's some things he brought up in the video which I think ultimately were irrelevant or distracted from this major point he was trying to bring up, which is okay. At the end of the day, I thought it was pretty good. I respect his opinion. I don't agree with it at all. I don't agree with all of it that much. I agree with parts of it, not all of it, but that's okay. One thing I want to end off with, this is from my perspective, like I said, just to give you guys a perspective of who I am as a player. If we look up my stats, just to give you guys some idea of who I am as a player, I have 2,030 total level. I don't really enjoy some skills that much. Ignore the runecrafting one. That was when I was in university and I was doing blood runecrafting. I've tried a decent amount of the content in the game. I haven't done everything. I don't really like Kriara. I've killed Kriara. I think she's boring as shit. I hate Calphite Queen because it's very boring. I don't really like Haspori that much. So some of these bosses, I haven't tried every boss in the game. I will 100% admit that. I've done a decent amount. I have a lot of Barrows for sure. I have some Abyssal Sire. But I've done a decent amount of TOA. I've done a decent amount of Gauntlet. I've done a okay amount of stuff. I haven't done that much Chambers of Xeric. I've done a couple expert modes. I haven't done enough. Like, I haven't done the full spectrum of stuff within the game. 100% understand that. So that's fine. You can come from understand that's where I'm coming from as a player. I'm interested in that stuff. I want to do it one day, but that's where I'm coming from. So I told you guys a little bit more about my background. I play in a somewhat more restricted game mode. You guys can take all that stuff into consideration to decide how seriously you want to take my opinion for this type of stuff. I thought I did a pretty decent job, even though somewhat rambling, conveying my opinion and my thoughts about the game and what I thought about Gnomonkey's opinion. So take that all seriously. That being said, at the end of the day, no matter what, somebody conveying their opinion, no matter how they feel, is allowed to convey his opinion, and to be ridiculed and criticized for it is just the most cringe shit on earth. Anyone that goes after this guy making really childish reactions to him, calling him a fucking idiot or stupid, you're a disgusting piece of shit that is so insecure it's not even funny. It takes a lot of balls and courage to really seriously give your opinion out there with the full understanding that it might come back to bite you in the ass. Some people are going to compare him to like Autumn Elegy, which, by the way, if you don't know who Autumn Elegy is, Autumn Elegy, he's like an OG OSRS player. He played back in like the start of OSRS, and he was like really into the skilling shit. He was like really into the skilling shit, and everyone loves. It's funny because if you watched Autumn Elegy, the funny thing about Autumn Elegy was that he was like extremely. How do I say this in a very polite way? Was he elitist? He was pretty fucking elitist, like in the way that he played the game. He absolutely was like, he would talk about like updates that come in the game and be like, this update sucks, nobody wants this, who the hell wants this? And it's like, dude, you're talking about like just yourself. He was the kind of guy that like the way he played the game when he first started was like really interesting. He was like really big into rune crafting. He really liked rune crafting, and he would like do like lava runes the whole way and kind of, I don't know if he necessarily pioneered, but he definitely popularized a lot of methods that were at one point not very popular, but made them very popular. By just making them more accessible. The first like really high level skiller that started to exist in the game. He was the kind of guy that was like super into efficiency and like bringing that whole light of efficiency scape into the into more popular light. Literally, like one thing I always remember from his videos was everywhere he walked around, he would always cast magic imbue on the lunar spellbook whenever he's doing anything in the game, every 12 seconds, because it gave him XP in magic. So at least he was getting XP in magic. It was just like so funny to me that this guy was doing this all the time. I thought that was always crazy. But he's notorious for his rants about the state of the game, and they always came off as remarkably elitist, and this guy is talking from a very narrow perspective of like how he hates everything in the game that isn't related to like making the game like super sweaty and like super skilling efficiency based, which I understand that perspective. I'm not like ignorant of why he feels that way or think that he's completely wrong for feeling that way, but I just remember being like, he's talking about a very narrow subsection of the game and can't see the bigger picture of what this is providing for the game. It doesn't really seem to be detracting much from the game while also adding a lot. And there's a fear that maybe Gnomonkey is also going down that route. I think maybe a little bit. Not out of hatred. I think it's like a valid opinion to have. I might not agree with it, but I can still respect his opinion and as a valid opinion. That's just how he feels, and that's fair. That's fair. He's allowed to feel that way. But to criticize him and like make like it's okay to criticize, but like make it valid criticism while recognizing there's a person there across the screen who's like genuinely opening themselves up. And I think it takes a lot of courage to do that, knowing that there's going to be assholes online that that mock you, that don't take you seriously, that discount every piece of valid criticism you have and, you know, like straw man you. That's awful to see. And then to like question your intelligence or whatever, that's fucked up. I don't think that's appropriate. I think I respect his opinion. I don't agree with it, but I respectfully disagree with what he takes, and that's all I have to say. Anyways, thanks for everybody that stuck around and watched. I know I kind of rushed the last hour of that because I like literally really have to go. But for everybody that stayed around and watched the whole thing, love y'all, really appreciate it, and hopefully you can take my pain seriously. And you're also welcome to disagree with me. If you're an asshole to me, fuck you. But you can critique me. I have no problem with that at all. I definitely don't think I got everything right. I don't think I made everything as eloquent as I wanted to. This was all very like, I didn't write anything down, so I'm sure there's a lot of errors and things that if I had a chance to go back over and rewatch, I'd probably be like, I don't know if I really agree with that kind of thing. But yeah, let me know what y'all think. Appreciate it. And if you like this video, by the way, I know I can't fucking end this. If you like this video, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I stream semi-irregularly on YouTube, usually on like weekends and stuff like that, kind of later to EST, like after like 9 p.m.-ish. No promises, but you know, sometimes I do stream. Continue my collection log and Bronze Man stuff. So yeah, love to have you around. Thanks. Have a great one.